Gentrification in Venezuela. Is that a thing here in the country? Well, today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
I know one of the biggest issues that you guys are facing on different hotspots, locations, very popular locations in Latin America is gentrification. You have seen this in places like the Riviera Maya, in Cancun, in Tulum, in Playa del Carmen, also in Mexico City itself, areas like Roma Norte, Condesa, Polanco, they have been becoming more expensive. First, for the locals, and also that brings some issues to the Western internationals that are going over there in order to live, in order to do some geo arbitrage regarding cost of living. Also, it's happening in places like Medellin in Colombia, on a lesser degree in Bogota, the capital of Colombia. Popular destinations like Costa Rica, Panama, Panama City, and even in places like El Zonte Beach, Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador. So imagine gentrification in El Salvador. Yeah, that is also happening according to some data. Also on a lesser degree, you're seeing it on Buenos Aires, on Santiago de Chile, and other main capitals in Latin America. Now, let's address why this is happening in Latin America. Well, first, we know that the Western capitals, cities and places all over the Western world, are becoming more expensive. Also, they are becoming less pleasant to live, and things buying like cooking gas and gasoline and energy and utilities are crazy, draconian, expensive, and prohibited expensive in many places in the Western world, places like Miami, New York, Los Angeles, and so on and so on. They have their own dynamic. For instance, people moving from New York to Miami or from Los Angeles to Texas, stuff like that. Also, in Western Europe, we have seen the increase in prices and utilities and so on due to the special operation in Ukraine that has brought some sanctions to Russia. Meanwhile, Russia is one of the main suppliers of energy to the European Union, so that created some spike in prices regarding energy and so on, and hence everything becomes more expensive in Western Europe. And also Western Europe is not as developed. I'm talking economically compared to the United States, so salaries are less over there, and these increases in different prices affects a lot the average European, the average EU citizen. Also, you have to add that thanks to the world culture and social media and so on, in Western nations, things like dating or making friends are becoming more difficult. Finding like-minded people over there is becoming more and more and more expensive. And also you have to add, this is a good thing, the increase of remote work, working from home, getting income throughout the internet or passive income, and so on and so on and so on. So that creates the possibility for many Westerns to go to do some geo arbitrage to these Latin American capitals, also other places in Southeast Asia and so on, or Eastern Europe. But Latin America has their own thing, especially Mexico, and has become a very popular destination for Western internationals in order to do geo arbitrage regarding cost of living and also experiences overall. Now, how Venezuela plays out this particular thing? We are having gentrification in Venezuela? Well, the answer is no and yes. Let me explain. First, let's start about the cost of living. Venezuela, we had a crisis, and I explained this a bunch of times. 80% of GDP collapse between the late 2010s until 2018, officially until 2020 because we had the pandemic and so on. Okay. And right now we have seen on real terms, not on nominal terms, a reflation on Venezuelan prices because Venezuela was dirt cheap on 2018. You can live with $50 per month or something like that, $100 per month. It was very, very cheap, but believe me, it wasn't unpleasant at all, unless you are a Western expat that earns in dollars and so on. but it was a very hidden gem back then. Very good. Afterwards, now the cost of living in Venezuela on the past 5 years have been increasing. We had a reflation. It's not like everything is crazy expensive in the country right now, but it's more expensive compared to 2018. So that makes the cost of living here in Venezuela. Also, you have to consider that Venezuela is de facto dollarized, so everything is priced on USD. So that makes more expensive live in Venezuela regarding cost of living. This comes from the average Venezuelan. However, on the grand scheme of things, Venezuela is not a dirt cheap country, not dirt cheap at all. So compared to most people think that Venezuela is a dirt cheap country, I always explain it's not a dirt cheap country. It's on average with Latin American standards. Some things are more expensive, some things are cheaper, depending on your cost structure. Afterwards, you have that many people here in Venezuela were struggling to make ends meet, combined to the dollarization, but still, Venezuela could be a little bit cheaper or a little bit more expensive, depending on other locations in Latin America. It's cheaper than, for instance, Panama City, Panama. It's cheaper than the Riviera Maya in Mexico. It's cheaper than Cartagena, Colombia. It's more expensive than Buenos Aires, Argentina, actually, because they have, the currency devaluation over there, the Argentinian peso. It's cheaper than most of the Brazilian capitals like Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro. Is more expensive, and also you have to take into account the Caracas. The nicer areas on each city is going to be more expensive. The east side of Caracas is going to be very expensive compared to the rest of the country. Margarita Island has a great ROI, and after that you have to go case by case. So it's not crazy prohibitive expensive, but it's not dirt cheap. Also, you have to take into account that we have internal migration. Many people in mainstream media and social media talks about the Venezuelan diaspora of over 7 million people all over the world. However, we also have a less covered diaspora that is an internal migration within the country. Many people, since 2018, something of that nature, that particular time frame, they start move to Caracas, to my hometown here, Lecheria, to Margarita Island, maybe some places on the borders, both with the Brazilian border and the Colombian border. So we have some relocations, a lot of relocation going on in Caracas, especially the west side of Caracas, Lecheria, Margarita Island, and lesser degree Valencia. So those particular areas of Venezuela have suffered somehow a degree of gentrification. So these places are going to be more expensive for the average, not only for the average Venezuelan, but even for some internationals. Afterwards, we have Western internationals making things more expensive. Actually, it doesn't regarding cost of living on those particular areas. However, we have particular issues. For instance, here in my hometown Lecheria, we have a bunch of expats that work on these big multinational oil companies. And in Lecheria, we have a bunch of expensive properties. So many people here, especially from I'm talking the administration people of these multinationals, could be Russians, could be Chinese, could be Americans like Chevron, Spaniards as well, that they don't do their due diligence regarding prices of real estate. And since they're not using their own money, they're using the company's money, they overprice the rentals regarding real estate rentals, and they create a new market. They reset the market. So right now, if you're an average Venezuelan, you have to pay a premium price in order to rent a property here in Lecheria. You can still get nice deals, by the way, but you have to know what you're doing, because these particular people are making more expensive renting here in Lecheria. And same thing happens in Caracas and other parts in the country. But on the grand scheme of things, Western internationals are making Venezuela more expensive, like in Medellin, like in Mexico City, like in Tulum, or places of that nature. Well, the answer is no. No. Just particular niches that you don't have to handle. I mean, just very tiny particular niches of the Venezuela cities. Afterwards, still we have the same pricing. Remember, Venezuela is not as cheap as most of you think on your particular expectations. But no, Venezuela is not way more expensive compared to the compared to these big capitals in Latin America, popular hotspots in Latin America. However, they're going to see places, for instance, the east side of Caracas, that's going to be expensive because Caracas is expensive. It's not that the whole country is expensive. If you go to a nice area on the east side of Caracas, going to a nice cafe, going to a nice restaurant, nice hotel, so on and so on and so on, they are not becoming more expensive. They are just expensive experiences because on those places they live wealthy Venezuelan people that can afford those prices. And if you are an international that comes with a low budget, I suggest you not to stay on such areas. Lastly, I'm going to talk about what I call the travel gentrification experience here in Venezuela. We have fancy destinations, very exotic destinations like Los Roques, a beautiful archipelago that is similar as the Venezuelan version of the Maldives. Also, we have the Santo Ángel and Canaima, beautiful remote landscapes, the biggest waterfall in the world, and so on and so on. So these packages are expensive, usually a few $1,000s per person, but it's expensive not because of gentrification. It's just those particular places, and those are two particular places in Venezuela, just for tourism. And in order to access to such locations, you have to charge a premium because it's expensive. Usually it's a charter flight with a very particular accommodation and lodging and logistics and supply chain and so on and so on and so on. So in order to give the experience both to Western internationals and also wealthy Venezuelans, they have to charge a premium. And this is not due to gentrification, it's just to the nature of the market and the logistics for those particular locations.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.